Currently, I am making an incredibly big IZ*ONE video, and while script writing for this video, I've been thinking a lot about Kep1er. They are next in line after IZ*ONE after all. A lot of people have gone on to compare IZ*ONE to Kep1er, which I want to get out of the way before we go any further in this video, I don't think is fair. I don't think we should compare IZ*ONE to Kep1er because while both groups have in part been managed by Swing Entertainment, IZ*ONE was also managed by Off the Record Entertainment, and Kep1er has been managed by Wakeone, who are also now managing Zero Base One. They also had completely different concepts. IZ*ONE also had more members, which allowed them to pull off some of their choreographies. And this might be a hot take, but I think that Girls Planet garnered more attention, especially through platforms like TikTok, compared to Produce 48. And again, that might be a hot take. I know Produce 48 was incredibly popular. I'm not downplaying its popularity, but it also existed before K-pop TikTok was really a big thing. You had everyone talking about Girls Planet in the formation of this group. So there were a lot of eyes on Kep1er's debut and their concept being space-themed, which was a lot different than the concepts that IZ*ONE played with. I've talked about Kep1er in the past on my channel, and I feel like that video was really negative, and don't get me wrong, this video is going to touch on negative things as well. And I want to express that I do feel for the members of this group who have been promoted pretty poorly by Wakeone, especially compared to their predecessors like IZ*ONE and IOI. The common misconception is that Kep1er does not have talent. I think Kep1er has talent. We can question if that talent is on par with IOI or IZ*ONE, but they certainly have talent. I would actually argue that they've become pretty good performers. But the issues with Kep1er perfectly define how groups cannot control their own destiny when it comes to K-pop. Wakeone is controlling the destinies of these girls, and unfortunately Wakeone has not put them in a very favorable position. Produced groups like Kep1er and IZ*ONE are formed to help boost the popularity of the individual members. It's the reason why these members go back to their individual companies after the group disbands. Wakeone do not have these members for 6 to 7 years. This is a 1.5 to 2 year contract. Really 2.5 because they will be set to disband in mid-2024. They debuted early 2022. My first question to Wakeone is, what is the goal of this group? Like, what is the point of Kep1er? Clearly, the goal with Off the Record and IZ*ONE was to create very high-quality music while boosting the popularity of their members. An easy way to do this is to give them very simple but intriguing concepts, good choreo, and of course good music. Wakeone has quite literally done none of these things. They are batting 0 for 3. But if Wakeone truly wanted the best for these girls, wouldn't there be a little bit more urgency to release a smash hit? Like putting some real effort into a comeback. WeFresh, Giddy, and Galileo do not have a ton of effort put in as your main title tracks. In fact, recently Kep1er has been known off of their past 2 projects as having pretty good B-sides, but those B-sides are always buried beneath that lead track that you promote the most. If you can't catch people's attention with Galileo, they're not going to listen to Love on Lock or The Door. There's a possibility that Galileo is the final Korean comeback for Kep1er, and you're going to try to tell me that Wakeone really put their full effort into that song? And what's more puzzling to me is I think Wakeone is trying. Like, Galileo is an important figure to astronomy. He was first to report about mountains on the moon, the phases of Venus, and the rings of Saturn. Like, the dude is very directly connected to space and the stars and what we understand about them now, and the whole MV takes place in, like, an art museum? And, like, there are very brief references to space here, but where is that concept going in this MV? And that's the one thing that the community has really pointed out about Kep1er, and that is the lack of a concept in general. Not even concept consistency here. We're talking about the lack of a concept for most of their music videos. For WeFresh, for Giddy, and even their debut Wadada. Like, there isn't a defined concept there. Again, their debut, Wadada, that is your defining point to really establish your concept. What are you going for as a group? And sure, there are like little nods to space-esque stuff here and there, but what about that MV really screams space? Besides the EP name First Impact. I tried to look up what their first comeback Do Blast even means, and I couldn't find anything. Up is a very cute, fun color pop song compared to Wadada, but again, outside of some very basic MV elements, like there's a shot where Mashiro is like in this tent and she has some like TV set up. One has like stars on a screen and I believe Saturn is on another. There's shots of some of the members like swimming around in space. There's a very like brief claymation shot of the Earth. What does any of that have to profoundly do with space? We could have seriously had a music video of Kep1er fighting aliens or something. Like, you look at their comebacks, and I'm not seeing the space concept anywhere. Like, what even is WeFresh's concept? Like, don't get me wrong, I actually like Troubleshooter as an album. I like Lion Tamer and Downtown, but what is that song? Like, what was the thought process from Wakeone? In fact, with I Do You, and Giddy, it almost feels like they moved into like the love concept. And then with Galileo, they were just like, oh yeah, by the way, we're a group that has a space concept again, but we're not actually gonna like fully commit to it. Wakeone has failed to do with Kep1er what IZ*ONE did really well, and that's having a defined concept but not overplaying it. IZ*ONE had a very defined like flower color concept with songs like La Vie en Rose, Violetta, Fiesta. Like with La Vie en Rose and Violetta, you had an obvious color and flower matching concept. Roses are not always red, but they are commonly depicted as red in media. Violets are not always purplish blue, but they are commonly depicted as being a more purplish blue. I say purplish blue because I'm colorblind, by the way. I have a very hard time distinguishing between the two. But you saw the concept there, right? We saw it in the music videos. Fiesta played with this by just straight up going into almost every direction with its color palette. Secret Story of the Swan had a lot of pinks. Panorama was much more focused on the black and white. IZ*ONE never overdealt their concept, and neither has Kep1er. But the problem is that we don't even know what Kep1er's concept really is because there's no consistency throughout their discography. Like, Wadada is kind of leaning in the space direction, and then Up kind of takes features from a space concept, but then we go into WeFresh, which has almost nothing to do with the space concept. You would think with Up and WeFresh they would double down on the space concept, but instead it almost feels like Wakeone removed their hands even more. I feel like I'm rambling here, but Kep1er just does not have a well-defined concept. Then there's the fact that I don't think really any of their main tracks, any of their comebacks have been as high of quality as any of IZ*ONE or even IOI's lead tracks. Kep1er's best comeback, in my opinion, was Up. I think that song is actually pretty good. I don't really dislike any of the comebacks musically. Like, I think they're completely average K-pop songs, but that is the problem with Wakeone. Average is not going to cut it. Like, these girls are only on contract for so long. Their contract is up by mid-2024. IZ*ONE, you can remember every single one of their comebacks. You know La Vie en Rose, their debut, Violetta, their first comeback, Fiesta, their second comeback, their third comeback, Secret Story of the Swan, fourth and final real Korean comeback, Panorama. Those 5 songs are marquee moments in their discography. What is Kep1er's marquee moment in their discography? Is it Up? Is it Giddy? Like, what is it? What is the quality I'm supposed to be looking at here? And good on you if you like any of those songs. Music is subjective, you're allowed to like them. But most people I've talked to on KTube have been very underwhelmed with Kep1er's releases. And in K-pop, your releases are your career. Like, that is what defines you. Kep1er does not have a discography-defining release. Yet. There's actually still time. Again, their contracts aren't supposed to be up till mid-2024, I believe. I saw some people saying that, like, they recently gave, like, their last real Korean performance and, like, their fans signed, they were crying and stuff, but I'm pretty sure they still have a relatively good amount of time left on their contract to at least get one more Korean release out. So maybe they come back one more time with an absolute incredible release. I have zero faith in Wakeone to do that, though. Kep1er, even in modern day K-pop where we're seeing more album sales than ever, Kep1er's highest selling project ever, their debut at 396,000 total copies, is less than IZ*ONE's second highest selling album ever. You might say, well, Taeju, that's kind of impressive because IZ*ONE was incredibly popular, but you have to remember that IZ*ONE still existed somewhat in the time of K-pop where album sales were not peaking like we're seeing them doing now. 17's over here having pre-order numbers of like 5 million plus. aespa and IVE are grabbing like 1.5 million plus pre-orders. Right now, you can go out and buy Kep1er's debut in their first comeback. Like, they're not done printing these copies yet. Yet, here are the numbers per comeback for Kep1er. 396,000 with their debut, 353,000 with their first comeback, 267,000 with their second comeback, 195,000 with their third comeback, and with their recent comeback Galileo, an all-time low in Korean comebacks of 126,000. For a produced group in 2023 with how album sales are, that is so low. and it clearly shows that they are rapidly fading in popularity. Well, why weren't they ever popular, besides the reasons I already pointed out in this video? They debuted arguably the worst time that you could debut as a rookie girl group. You had IVE debuting, LE SSERAFIM debuting, New Jeans debuted later that year. Kep1er debuted in a rookie class that will probably go down 5 to 10 years from now as being one of the greatest in K-pop history. And they debuted with a half-baked concept. It is hard to win a race when your car blows its engine at the very start. You know how in Mario Kart, if you hold down the go button too long, your engine will blow up when the race starts? That's what Kep1er did. Like, they tried to hit that 2-second marker where you get the boost, but they completely missed it. And worst part is that these rookie groups had defined concept. LE SSERAFIM, defined concept. IVE had a defined concept. New Jeans had a defined concept. Then there's the fact that a lot of the fandom had a lot of infighting on debut because of how Girls Planet was framed and how a lot of solo standing was present in the Girls Planet community, which not only drove people away from the community, but from the group in general. People really loved IZ*ONE as a group. Sure, you had some solo stands here and there, but a lot of people liked all of the members of the group. With Kep1er, literally more than half that fan base is just solo stands. Then there's the fandom named Keplians, which I didn't even really hate that much, but it just feels really lazy. When IZ*ONE disbanded, it was a very sad time, and I'll cover it more in my upcoming video. But you knew a lot of members of that group were going to have very successful careers going forward because of how popular that group was. IZ*ONE was not just a group competing with other top-tier groups, they were competing with like the holy trinity of the third generation for actual popularity at the time. So while I was sad IZ*ONE was disbanding, I knew Kwon Eunbi was going to be a great soloist. At least a popular soloist because of her former group's popularity. With Kep1er, I can't say that. I can't see a lot of the different members leaving this group and having incredibly successful careers. Kep1er was supposed to be a launching point for some of these girls' careers, but honestly, I think it's hurt them more than anything. And it's sad to see so much more effort going into Zero Base One already, which is the group that has come from Boys Planet. Like, their debut was not only sonically a better song, featured a very memorable sample and everything, but even their light stick they revealed recently is so much cooler than Kep1er's. The music video looked like it had way more production go into it. Even if I will say I think the debut itself felt like it was trying to copy a little bit of what La Vie en Rose did, with the lighter concept with obvious flower ties, but I still think it stands alone pretty well. This has led a lot of people to say that Kep1er was a test run for Wakeone for Zero Base One, and that's understandable seeing the treatment between the two groups so far. I want to finish up the video with what the title is alluding to, which is the legacy that Kep1er is going to leave behind, and there's not much of one. This will be the most forgettable produced girl group to ever exist. And I say this out of sadness because I do like a lot of the members in this group. I think there is talent in this group. Unfortunately, a lot of wasted talent. I really do wish for the best for these Kep1er members after they disband and return to their companies. It is definitely going to be an uphill battle for them. Again, I don't want to directly compare IZ*ONE to Kep1er here because IZ*ONE was so much more popular than Kep1er, right? And they had different concepts and different member amounts. But whenever I have to talk about IZ*ONE, I always in the back of my mind at least think about Kep1er and the failure of that group. Because the space concept can be pretty hard to play off of, but it's one that has a lot of creativity that can be put behind it. Unfortunately, Wakeone just did not give us that. Let me guys know what you think about Kep1er's discography and the group's legacy that they're going to leave behind in the comments. And I promise the IZ*ONE video is coming. It's just been very hard with current school stuff I've been involved in. So hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys in my next video.